Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
So we're starting chapter 49, The Dark One Stirs, and our symbol once again is the blighted tree.
Yeah, I noticed he uses it twice in a row here. Do you think that's for a reason, or do you think it's just that it's still appropriate?
I assumed because it's just still appropriate. They're still in the blight, and this chapter really runs, or the last chapter really runs right into this. Rand falls asleep at the end, or is going to sleep at the end of the last chapter, and he's waking up. The first line of this one.
No dreams.
No dreams.
He's close enough to Moiraine that she's able to block them.
Dawn woke Rand with a start, the sullen sun pricking his eyelids as it peeked reluctantly over the treetops of the blight. Even so early, heat covered the spoiled lands in a heavy blanket. He lay on his back, with his head pillowed on his blanket roll, staring at the sky. It was still blue, the sky. Even here, that, at least, was untouched. He was surprised to realize that he had slept. For a minute, the dim memory of a conversation overheard seemed like part of some dream. Then he saw Nynaeve's red-rimmed eyes. She had not slept, obviously. Lan's face was harder than ever, as if he had resumed a mask and did not intend to let it slip again.
So a couple of things I wanted to talk about there. I just wanted to... He mentioned the sky and how it wasn't corrupted and untouched, and how kind of as the series goes on, we see the storm come in, and the sky does become corrupted.
Yeah.
And covered with those, evil clouds, basically.
And we can assume that the Dark One's tampering with the weather kind of emanates from...
Shogul.
I almost said Shudder Logoth.
Different evil.
Yeah.
I don't know why I started. He talked about how the sky was uncorrupted, and that just set me off that tangent. And then, of course, we ended the last chapter with Nynaeve and Lan
having a bit of a conversation about the realisticness of them having a relationship.
It's a very realistic conversation, isn't it? Because, I feel like in a lot of places you have these conversations that are, dramatic and I love you. And this is no. Practicality has to take heed here.
Yeah, they're two very practical people.
Right.
It's too bad more conversations about relationships can't only last for, page 731. And that's all. 300 characters, not double-spaced. Simple, easy, cut and dry. When does that ever happen?
It only happens if you're as badass as Lan and you can convey meaning in one word.
If you're the wisdom of two rivers and Lan Mandragoran.
But yeah, so Nynaeve is clearly not slept. She's realized she's lost something she never really had. And so Egwene sort of comes up. I really like this scene between Egwene and Nynaeve because we see it from Rand's perspective.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of want to do that thing where you see someone talking in the distance and you put words in their mouth.
Sure. Egwene went over and crouched beside the wisdom, her face concerned. He could not make out what they said. Egwene spoke, and Nynaeve shook her head.
So I think that's Egwene saying, hey, how did the talk go with Lan? Because I assume she knew about it ahead of time, that Nynaeve was going to make her move.
Maybe.
And Nynaeve's no, didn't go well.
Yeah. Egwene said something else, and the wisdom waved her hand dismissively. Instead of going, Egwene bent her head closer, and for a few minutes the two women talked even more softly, with Nynaeve still shaking her head.
So I imagine that Egwene's basically saying, what's going on? Didn't you didn't work out? And Nynaeve's no, it's fine. And Egwene's go talk to him again. And she's shaking her head. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
The wisdom ended it with a laugh, hugging Egwene and, by her expression, making soothing talk. When Egwene stood, though, she glared at the warder. Lan did not seem to notice. He did not look in Nynaeve's direction at all.
And I imagine that laugh is her just trying to laugh it off like it's no big deal. I can just see that being a super painful...
Or maybe laughing at herself. I kind of saw it like Egwene is helping her.
Yeah, you think Egwene's comforting her,
and Nynaeve is laughing at that, that she needs it, or
that
she would need it.
That's true. That she's getting it from someone who's younger,
man that thinks with the hair on his chest.
Yeah, don't we all?
Shaking his head, Rand gathered his things, never understanding.
No. Oh, and I like that Egwene stands up and she totally like glares at Lan, blames him entirely for being an idiot, which he is. Like, you know,
Yeah, he is being ridiculous.
he needs to go through his journey and discover that death is lighter than a feather. He says it
Lan,
all the time,
yeah.
but he is letting death weigh him down like the mountain. He is stopping himself from marrying because of the idea of death.
Or his potential death.
Right.
Listen, Lan, just like everyone's going to die in the last battle, so if you could just enjoy yourself now.
Right. And like, yeah, it just bugs me because he's the one who says that all the time, that death is lighter than a feather, and yet he's letting his death dictate his life.
I'm nodding.
It's one of the main contradictions that he has inside of him, he has to evolve out of. And that's, I think, why the scene where Nynaeve, you know, will my husband fight alone, is such a powerful, emotional scene for me, because it really is Nynaeve forcing Lan to accept help and be the person he needs to be.
Wasn't it just a couple of chapters ago? I can't remember exactly, but Lan has a line where he says something like, "We're not dead yet." He should take his own advice. I'll never find it, just flipping through now, but
I don't remember the line, but I believe it.
Yeah. I have this little reading here. As Rand's getting ready to leave, the Seven Towers stood plain in the morning light, distant broken stumps, like huge rough hills that merely hinted at grandeur gone. The 100 lakes were smooth, unruffled blue. Nothing broke the surface this morning. When he looked at the lakes and the ruined towers, he could almost ignore the sickly things growing around the hill. Lan did not seem to be avoiding looking at the towers, any more than he seemed to be avoiding Nynaeve, but somehow he never did, as he concentrated on getting them ready to go.
Yeah, he's in an emotionally tough spot. He is standing on the capital of his dead land in which he is a king, and he has just told the woman he loves he cannot be with her.
Yeah. Never.
Never, ever. He's not doing so hot.
Yeah, well, he loses that fight. The second one, anyway.
Yeah. Really loses them both. I mean, Malkier rises up to fight with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. I like this this quote, which I think gives a lot of insight into why some of the societies may be a little more matriarchally dominated, but, you know, Rand just sits here and goes, all women are Aes Sedai. And I think it's both a comment on, you know, the ability to read minds and also just the ability to be just infuriating. Infuriating? Thank you.
He just never understands.
Women are a puzzle. Women are an enigma. It's sort of like saying it's an expression, I feel like, of the land in the way that, you know, men are like, women are crazy. You know, women are Aes Sedai. Like, Aes Sedai is this stand-in for something that's completely not understandable, mysterious, and just.
Yeah. And I mean, we see the women do that throughout the series too, where they
lump all men together and call them, you know,
make huge
lummoxes. Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is definitely, if you haven't noticed, a theme of the series is giving each character a really strong personality and then that character generalizing the entire other gender. Because part of their personality is stereotypes.
Yeah.
We all have our prejudices and our stereotypes.
And the kind of long-running theme of misunderstandings.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking up the word lummox. Just realized I don't actually know what the definition is. A clumsy, stupid person. It's one of those things that I kind of knew from context, but I didn't actually know what the definition was.
Yeah, I assume you weren't surprised by the definition.
No.
So the next thing I have is Moiraine taking down the barrier. And I thought this was kind of interesting, this whole scene, really.
Oh, yeah.
Because the only other time I can think about when I see someone take a weave down is when Elaine picks apart the gateway and it explodes.
I thought that was Avienda.
Avienda definitely does it once, but I think when it explodes, it's Elaine.
Gotcha.
I'll double check that in editing. So let me say this.
Classic nuke scene.
No, it was totally Avienda did it. Definitely.
Is it?
Yeah.
Totally. I thought so.
I'll just edit in whichever one is right.
Cool.
But yeah, so she takes this thing apart because she doesn't want to leave a residue. But, that's something we only see a very few Aes Sedai have the skill to do.
Yeah, it's considered a talent by itself.
Yeah. Unless she's doing something else. She's not picking apart the gateway, but just sort of like channeling the energies away. I can't think of another scene where we see something like that.
I just reread the paragraph. It's really not specific about what's happening, except that Nynaeve and Egwene seem like they're sensing the channeling, and then they seem almost alarmed. It's at a point where Moiraine is doing something big.
Yeah, I think they're both just sensing somebody channeling for the first time. And I think they see each other sensing it for the first time and sort of like, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Their reaction is very much just like having a reaction for the first time to someone else channeling.
The warder only waited for her to settle in Aldib's saddle, this is Moiraine, before he led them north, toward the Mountains of Doom, looming in the near distance. Even under the sunrise, the peaks rose black and lifeless, like jagged teeth. In a wall they stretched, east and west, as far as the eye could see. Egwene asked if they'll reach the eye today.
Oh, there was one sentence here I wanted to talk about, where Rand says he was sure there was something in the silent exchange that he should understand, but that feather-light brush across his mind vanished before he could grasp it. And he's watching Nynaeve and Egwene shiver.
Uh-huh.
And so I guess he just thinking he should realize that they're sensing Moiraine channeling, or is there something else that he should have realized?
I think it's at the fringes of his awareness. And I think we see this happening with the other characters as well, especially when we get to see things from their perspective.
Yeah, it was just a thought. You think that he's just...
We've seen Rand sense channeling before, right?
Uncertain. We've definitely brought up the examples of it, and we've definitely been like, yes, totally. But some of it could just be, that him shivering or goosebumps or whatever.
Yeah.
Could be coincidental. And there's definitely times where channeling is going on around him that he doesn't talk about the goosebumps.
Yeah, I mean, in part it may just not be mentioned, but also his skill is really raw and undeveloped at this point, and it may just be off or on depending on the day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way I interpret it.
It also seems like when he knows she's channeling, he doesn't, there's no goosebumps mentioned. But when she sort of channels when he's not really paying attention, maybe...
That gets his attention sometimes.
Yeah.
Or that it gets his attention sometimes.
Right. I'm stretching there.
Yeah, we both are.
Right. We see Matt with a scarf on for the first time. Well, for the second time. Has he been wearing the scarf ever since he got his eyes blinded? He had it the whole time?
I believe so. I think it's the same scarf. And he pulls it over his head.
Just across his forehead. Just because
Yeah.
it's so hot. Matt with the scarf is definitely something he starts early and he keeps it, especially once he gets hung, he keeps it to hide the scar.
And as the party moves through the Blight, the trees seem to tremble from the passage of the horses over the ground. Look as if they want to grab us, Matt said nervously. Nynaeve gave him an exasperated, scornful look, and he added fiercely, well, they do look it. And some of them do want it, the Aes Sedai said. Her eyes over her shoulder were harder than Lan's for an instant, but they want no part of what I am, and my presence protects you. Matt laughed uneasily, as if he thought it a joke on her part. Rand was not so sure. I don't know if we see any more of that throughout the series, maybe a little, but I thought it was interesting that the creatures of the Blight respond to Moiraine differently than they would a typical human.
I think she is embracing the one power. So she's actively embracing that. And that's what she thinks is going to, they can
Protect
sense
them.
it, protect, and that's what's protecting them, is like, that's basically like holding a grenade with the pin pulled out, and just being like, come at me, whatever, and everyone's a little bit afraid that they can, not everyone, but the things in the Blight that can sense that fear it. And normally that would keep them, because she and Lan have come to the Blight many times to fight.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
But things are a little bit different this time.
Abruptly, this is Rand, stared off to his left into the forest. That tree, not 20 paces away, had trembled, and it was none of his imagination. He could not say what kind it was, or had been. So gnarled and tormented was its shape. As he watched, the tree suddenly whipped back and forth again, then bent down, flailing at the ground. Something screamed, shrill and piercing. The tree sprang back straight, its limbs entwined around a dark mass that writhed and spat and screamed.
I whip my prey back and forth. But then I noticed, so Lan takes off, and every time I've read this, for some reason, I thought he went off to kill the tree.
I don't know what he's doing.
But he goes in the opposite direction of the tree.
Yeah.
And he goes and kills one of those creatures, but I don't even know how he knows it's there.
Well, he can feel them.
Oh, do you think so?
Shadow spawn.
Right, because they are all shadow spawn. Are they shadow spawn?
I imagine inside a warder's head or an Aes Sedai head, there's like a mini map in an old-fashioned video game where you can see where approximately the enemies are as little red dots.
Like I always think of Aliens when they're like, they're in the ceiling. And see all the dots like coming out.
Yeah. But yeah, he comes back up and forth a lot.
I imagine he's just, ambushing things in the Blight. I wrote down, Lan's not afraid of the Blight. The Blight's afraid of Lan.
The next thing I have, as the party's kind of quickening its pace, is from out of the trees the warder appeared, holding his sword well clear of himself and his mount. I liked this imagery a lot here. Black blood stained the blade, and steam rose from it. Carefully, Lan wiped the blade clean with a cloth he took from his saddlebags, examining the steel to make sure he had gotten every spot. When he dropped the cloth, it fell apart before it reached the ground, even the fragments dissolving. Silently, a massive body leaped out of the trees at them. The warder spun Mandarb, but even as the warhorse reared, ready to strike with steel-shod hooves, Mat's arrow flashed, piercing the one eye in the head that seemed mostly mouth and teeth. Kicking and screaming, the thing fell, one bound short of them.
Matt's got the fastest hands in the West.
Yeah, he does.
He's a fast shooter. He saw something coming. He had his bow out and an arrow through its eye. Super, super fast. He was the first to respond.
Yeah. And kind of on the same note that we were talking about a second ago, I see all this stuff with Perrin, Rand, and Mat as their and Nynaeve and Egwene as they're like coming into their abilities, where things are working sometimes, not others, but this like their superpowers start beginning.
At this point, they're
phase.
just becoming fighters.
Yeah.
Basic level 1, kill the tree beast.
Yeah.
They're getting some basic experience points here.
Mat rolled an 18 on that.
Totally. Your arrow penetrates the beast's eye, killing it instantly. Congratulations.
There's a rustle in the trees. Intuition roll. We're bringing it there, guys.
Good shooting, sheepherder.
Moiraine shook her head. It should not have been willing to come so close to one who touches the true source. Egilmar said the Blight stirs, Lan said. Perhaps the Blight also knows a web is forming in the pattern. Hurry, Moiraine dug her heels into Aldib's flanks. We must get over the high passes quickly. But even as she spoke, the Blight rose against them.
So I imagine that, the Trollocs are amassed at Tarwin's Gap.
Yeah.
The Dark One is very, he is touching the world as hard as he can right now. I wonder if this would be about the right time for the Forsaken to be loose. Because they have to be, because they're following them, right?
Yeah, it's not clear exactly which ones are free. Well, we know the first few. We know in the order that we see them, We know that Ishmael is the first to be released. But from what I could find, it's not clear if the rest are released at once, one at a time, or exactly when that is. But we know that there are at least 4 out now, because we know
I count 3.
Agenor, Balal?
Bethalmal. They become Osengar and Arengar.
Yeah. Ishmael.
Yeah.
And Lanfear is around soon.
Soon, but I don't think in Eye of the World.
No, she isn't. But I would assume that this is like days between now and how long between now and when they run into Selene for the first time?
A long time.
Is it?
Because they hole up in the mountains over the winter.
Okay.
And there's that whole scene where Moiraine is getting the spies who are coming in to visit her.
I could probably do more research and find out more, but I am of the opinion, the last time I was trying to read about this, that the rest of the Forsaken are basically released at once. That they're all out there somewhere now, and they may or may not be getting anything done. But
I think it's more of a slow release. Because
Yeah.
I think, Ishmael gets spun out on a regular basis. So he's been out
right.
for a while, just on his normal cycle. Bethalmal and Agenor are released either now or right before now.
And there is a reference, yeah, you may be right here. There's a reference at some point that they were close to the edge.
They were close, exactly. And so they
the,
face the grinding of the wheel. So that's why they're all old and fucked up
yeah.
and look terrible, because they've aged and been close to the surface of the grinding of the wheel. And then the longest period of time, honestly, in the entire series is the Great Hunt, because there's a section in the beginning for a couple of months where they sit over the winter, and there's the Portal Stone teleportation, which is a big
couple months.
So like out of the 2 years that the series takes place, almost a full year of it, I think, is in the Great Hunt.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's a long time. And so during that time, the Forsaken are released and start to establish their power base.
During the Great Hunt. I like that.
I think Selene is in the Great Hunt, so she's out.
Yeah.
Fairly early, but that's when she shows up. Lanfear.
Right. Selene's just a fake name she gives.
So basically, the Blight attacks at full speed. They throw everything they've got at the group.
Yeah, the Blight attacks all at once. Well, the Blight erupts into activity.
Right.
Rand mentions at one point that if the creatures weren't also fighting each other, they would surely have died. They're fighting the humans and each other. Or like the trees are eating the creatures and lashing out at the humans and so on.
Is there something in particular triggering this, do you think? The only thing I could think of is that maybe a seal broke.
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah. Other than either that or the attack is starting at the gap.
I like that theory.
And that somehow the Blight, obviously being somehow connected to the corruption of the Dark One, is responding to...
We see weapons drawn and the parties running through the Blight toward the toward the passes.
I like Matt goes into the old tongue.
Yeah.
Kara and Kaldazar, which we've seen him say before. I think it's like, for the glory of the Red Hand.
Something about the sun.
For the honor of the rose of the sun, the rose of the sun. Fear of death holds not my heart, the rose of the sun.
It's a solid battle cry, if I say so myself. I've read enough fantasy to be a connoisseur of battle cries.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah. And Perrin really shines in this scene.
Yeah, he takes the lead. He's got that axe. He is just, the axe is perfect for what they're doing, which is carving his way through trees. Live, bloated, evil trees.
He's going wolf brother here.
Totally. He hates the corruption of the Blight as much as the wolves do. That's definitely something he's absorbed from being part of the wolves, is the hatred of the shadow.
He's like a darker Perrin now. Or more dangerous Perrin, maybe I should
Definitely
say.
more dangerous. And a more driven Perrin.
Flailing trees and howling things shied from the stocky axeman, shying as much from the fierce golden eyes as from the whistling axe. He forced his horse forward, step by determined step.
And, you know, he's been frustrated, and I feel like this is giving him a chance to really vent his frustration.
Yeah.
And he's been unable to really, you know, he has, right now there's something he can fight that's not human, that's not evil, that's evil, unequivocally, and he can just let the inner beast out and just go at it. Unlike when he's fighting people, there's always that bit of guilt. But when he fights Trollocs, he is just unstoppable.
All wolf.
Yep.
No brother. Sorry. Here's something I was thinking about as we were talking about Lan earlier, like moving around the party and how I wasn't really sure what he was doing. I was thinking of this as well, right after that little paragraph with Perrin. Again and again, the warder took Mandarb into the trees, his blade and gauntlets dripping with blood that bubbled and steamed. When he came back now, more often than not, there were gashes in his armor, bleeding gashes in his flesh, and his warhorse stumbled and bled too. Each time the Aes Sedai paused to lay her hands on the wounds, and when she took them away, only the blood that was left on unmarked flesh. I light signal fires for halfmen, she said bitterly.
So this is sort of classic, since we got into the D&D theme a little bit earlier. This is just a classic party. He's a ranger. He's out there ambushing things in the darkness. He is more effective in the bushes as being able to sneak up behind evil things, rather where he's got a bunch of fighters who can stand. You know, he's got Perrin with the axe to lead them. He's got Rand with the sword to back him up. He's got Matt to take down anything that breaks through, but he's out there taking out the big threats before they even know he's there.
Yeah.
He is the threat in the night. You know, he's Batman.
Lan is the knight.
Right. And of course, Moiraine. I mean, how can we forget Moiraine just tossing fireballs left and right?
Sure.
You got your magic user and your healer.
I don't know how useful the kids really are, but I think Lan and Moiraine would be okay in this situation. I also, when I read that scene, I felt like I just got the sense, and we know this already, but I got it gave me a really good sense that Lan and Moiraine have done this before. Like, this has happened before.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that having a couple of, you know, having an axe and a sword and a bowman,
I don't
who are
think
all competent,
totally
you know,
anything,
yeah. I think they form a wall that she's able to use in a sort of a front. I imagine that would be, I think they've done this before, but never to this extent.
Yeah.
The Blight, I don't think, has ever been this agitated in their living memory.
Yeah, I like that, though. That is where Lan's most useful.
In the bush.
In the night.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? I don't think it's even the night. It's not the night, but
Yeah.
it applies.
It's dark. You've got trees and tall grass and stuff like that, you know. There's lots of vegetation. It's just rotting, corrupted vegetation. So they're holding their own until the worms.
Then a fluting cry arose behind them, distant and thin. It cut through the snarling from the denizens of the Blight around them. The reedy, shrill cry came again, like a cracked shepherd's pipes, and was answered in kind by a chorus, half a dozen singing among themselves, far behind. Worms, Lan said grimly.
And we find out that these are shadow spawn created by Agenor.
Yeah, we were talking a little before we started recording, and I was saying I think it was Demandred that we hear that from. I can't exactly remember, but I'm sure that we know that the worms are shadow spawn.
Well, and Demandred runs into a adult worm in the short story River of Souls.
That's right.
So that's, I think, probably where we get the information, where he probably thinks about.
Yeah. Demandred says something along the lines of that Agenor, he thinks that Agenor was just trying to create the most horrifying thing that he could when he created the worms.
And he succeeded. These are pretty freaking horrifying.
and like they're not controllable or useful in battle, and that they serve no other purpose other than to just be the most monstrous thing.
And I read channeling at them can only make them stronger.
Yeah, I think we learned that from the same.
Yeah.
In the same thought.
So I mean, it's just these are just crazy things. But for some reason they can't turn into adults in the Blight, so they just stay in worm.
I looked it up to be sure. We don't know how that works, the transformation, or really anything other than what we just said about the worms.
We get like one or two little statements about them, and
yeah.
But of course, I always think of them as like the Dune worms.
Yeah, I saw some people saying that online, that it's kind of like a Robert Jordan hailing the Dune series, which is that's totally fine with me.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great reference. Just like talking about the worms.
Yeah, and the way the
way they like burrow and travel and are attracted to things and are evil. I'm not so sure about the forming adults, but
Lan says something like, or kind of alludes that he doesn't think they think. He says they're just either hungry or afraid.
Sure.
It's like that's the only thing these two things do. And that definitely reminds me of the worms in Dune, that don't seem intelligent in any way. They're just like a force of nature.
I do wonder what makes a worm afraid.
Yeah, whatever lives in the high passes.
Yeah, which we never find out.
I looked.
No.
Checked the internet. Nobody knows.
No, but they never talk about it again. No idea what it could be. Other than it's just maybe the territory itself, that maybe the rocky crags aren't, hospitable to a burrowing worm-like creature.
They are headed roughly toward Sheol. Roughly. I guess it makes sense that more terrible things even, or mutated things, live closer to Sheol.
That would make sense. And just that when you have a different ecological niche up in the mountains, different creatures would survive up there.
Yeah.
It's going to have different kinds of vegetation, different temperatures, probably a rockier ground.
Won't the worms follow us into the mountains? Egwene asked breathlessly, and Lan gave a sharp laugh. They won't. Worms are afraid of what lives in the high passes. Loyal moaned again.
That's another question I'd love to ask. What lives in the high passes?
Yeah.
What are worms afraid of?
Yeah, please message us about that if you have even a theory.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some theories.
Me too. We see Rand kind of decide that if they're going to die, he's going to turn around and fight rather than run.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, there's this, he's trying to form the void.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Something weird happens here.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. He's trying to form the void and it's not working. And then.
So the void, I'll read it.
Sure.
The void eluded him, forming, then shivering into 1,000 points of light, reforming and shattering again, each point burning into his bones until he quivered with the pain and thought he must burst open. Light, help me. I can't go on. Light, help me. That sounds an awful lot. Whenever I hear about the burning in the bones, that automatically makes me think that he's embraced Saidin.
As I was reading this,
Saidar.
And I haven't done a reread in a while, but as I was reading this, I didn't remember that scene, and I was waiting for him to or something to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was waiting for him to channel. And I don't know that he does, but I think he embraces Saidin right there.
Yeah, and he's in that light, help me, I need something. And what happens right after that?
He was gathering the bay's reins to turn back, to face the worms or anything rather than what lay ahead, when the nature of the land changed. Between one slope of a hill and the next, between crest and peak, the blight was gone. Green leaves covered peacefully, spreading branches. Wildflowers made a carpet of bright patches and grasses stirred by a sweet spring breeze. Butterflies fluttered from blossom to blossom, and so on.
So I think it's Rand's need at that point that pulls the eye of the world to him. And that's why it appears when it does.
Yeah, I wonder how much that has to do with the Green Man himself. And the Green Man says that this place was created, so I imagine it's...
Well, and he even...
It acts by itself.
It does. It seems to act without his direction. Because he says to Moiraine, how is it that you came to be here twice? This place was made so that you could only come once.
Yeah, so the Green Man doesn't even understand.
Exactly. So the place itself is drawn by need. And so I think we see here Rand being consumed with need, plus maybe amplifying it by embracing the power, and somehow using that to pull the eye of the world to him.
Yeah, until he quivered with the pain and thought he must burst open. It does sound like channeling. I thought it was on the other side of the mountains, Rand mumbled. He could still see the peaks filling the northern horizon, and the high passes. You said it was always beyond the passes. This place, said a deep voice from the trees, is always where it is. All that changes is where those who need it are. A figure stepped out of the foliage. I guess I'll do the description. A man shape as much bigger than Loyal as the Ogier was bigger than Rand. A man shape of woven vines and leaves, green and growing. His hair was grass, flowing to his shoulders. His eyes huge hazelnuts, his fingernails acorns. Green leaves made his tunic and trousers. So, 15 foot tall, jolly green giant.
It's an ant.
Yeah. I think like the green giant, like from the canned food. He looks like a human, but he's made out of, well, he's Pan, the Green Man.
Sure. I think of the Jolly Green Giant. What were those pea commercials?
Yeah.
Like green peas.
Green giant.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He would be a really cool CGI character.
Yeah.
With the scar across his face and the...
Made out of plants. Butterflies swirled around him, lighting on his fingers. And his face.
Yeah.
He's a really cool magic creature.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
He really is. And they're like, it's the Green Man. He's like, of course it is. Who else would it be? Like, you're at the eye of the world. I also like he calls the hazelnut eyes regarded Loyal. It is good to see you, little brother. In the past, many of you came to visit me, but few of recent days. Loyal scrambled down from his big horse and bowed formally. You honor me, tree brother. And just the tree brother and then little brother, I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
The Green Man does not call him tree brother because he's not a tree. But he does call him little brother. So I wonder what the relationship between the Ogier and the Green Man are. I mean, obviously the Ogier revere trees and all living things.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had a god, it would be like the Green Man. Or not really a god, because they know them as a species.
Right.
Because there used to be a whole...
Aren't they one of the created species?
Yeah, I think so.
It was created during the Age of Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see the Green Man look at the rest of the party after greeting Loyal, and his eyes lit on Perrin. A wolf brother. Do the old times truly walk again, then?
Which is, I think, where we get the term wolf brother from. I don't know if anyone else... Does Moiraine talk about wolf brother as a term before that?
I don't think so. I think that may actually be the first time we're seeing it.
Yeah. So when we say Perrin's a wolf brother, I think that's the Green Man is the one who coins that term.
Yeah. And then he looks at Rand. Strange clothes you wear, child of the dragon. Has the wheel turned so far? Do the people of the dragon return to the first covenant? But you wear a sword. That is neither now nor then.
Such a great line. I want to break that down like word by word. Because, the Green Man is seeing him as an Aielman.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Which he is.
And so when he says people of the dragon, he's using that term, people of the dragon, as the Aielman. And, I never really caught that people of the dragon is a term used very early on here. Because it becomes such a pivotal point in the Dragon Reborn when the people of the dragon come to...
We find out who the people of the dragon are.
Yeah, and we don't know that at this point. And of course he's saying, do the people of the dragon return to the first covenant? So he's seeing Rand... I think the first covenant is back when they were peaceful.
Yeah.
And so he sees Rand dressed not in the Cadden Sor, not in warrior clothing, and is saying, have you given up your ways as warriors? And then he says, but you wear a sword. That's neither here nor now, which is basically saying it's not now because no Aielman carry swords.
Yeah.
And it's not then because no Aielman carried any weapon. There's so much packed into that one little quote about like the Aiel and the swords and the weapons and the here and the now, and it's so good. Love that little thing. And then like he can't remember any details about it.
Yeah. After Rand says, I don't know what you're talking about. What do we know about the scar that's a dead foliage by his face?
Nothing.
Is he just old?
I assume it's a battle wound.
The Green Man says, You're welcome here. You, Moiraine Sedai, are more than a surprise. When this place was made, it was made so that no one could find it twice. How have you come here? Need, Moiraine replied. My need's the world's need. Most of all is the world's need. We have come to see the eye of the world. The Green Man sighed, the wind sighing through thick-leafed branches. Then it has come again. That memory remains whole. The Dark One stirs. I have feared it. Every turning of years, the Blight strives harder to come inside, and this turn, the struggle to keep it out has been greater than ever, since the beginning. Come, I will take you.
And so I just wanted to circle back. He is the last of the Nym, which is artificial beings constructed from the One Power during the Age of Legends to aid with plants and growing things. When a Nym walked, they left footprints full of sprouting things. Most of the Nym were killed during the War of the Shadow. Somashta, which is the name of the Green Man, being the only known survivor.
This particular Nym is named Somashta?
Yes. Someshta? It seems like a very Indian god name.
It does, kind of.
Does anyone know what that's referring to?
I saw the Celtic Pan, or the Green Man, like a man made out of oak leaves or something.
You have an interesting trio here where you have the Green Man, the Ogier, and the Aiel, who would all sing together to grow things.
We see a scene of that later.
Yeah.
I think maybe in Rand's memories, or Rand's ancestors' memories.
Yes, when he goes back through the Terran-Grial.
Mm-hmm.
No, and that's really cool. But I just noticed that like we have actually sort of the same three here in the Eye of the World. You have an Ogier and Aiel,
An Ogier and Aielman
and
the Nym.
The Nym. Which I think may be something to do with why the tree is able to survive. When the Nym dies, they bury him, and there's a tree that's going to be overtaken by the Blight, and Loyal sings to it, and it stays alive.
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
When the Green Man kills one of the Forsaken, at least one.
Just one. He kills Bethalmal.
Right, and Rand kills the other. Or burns him out.
I think what I think happens is that they're both pulling from the Eye of the World, and Agenor can't handle the power. It's too much, and it burns him out.
He burns himself out?
It burns himself out. Because he's fighting with Rand, and Rand is so much more just able to channel more raw power.
Yeah.
And it's like touching a battery, and he just short circuits. Burns himself out.
I haven't reread that scene yet, but this week.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that.
I think Moiraine says very few channelers, even in the Age of Legends, could have handled that amount of power. And Agenor is never considered one of the most powerful channelers.
Just telling Seth I have a buddy renting my extra room right now, and he's like, just texted me a second ago, like, hey, are you planning on being home tonight? And I've lived alone for long enough now that I don't really think about it very much, but I'm really only in my apartment like now and then. It's kind of inefficient, I guess. So I was paying for that place all the time, or this whole time, just myself living in it, and I had like a whole room, a bedroom that I don't use, and
you spent
all
way
this
too much money on
storage
that place
in the basement that I don't use. And yeah, I know, I just wanted to have my own place.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
Now I stay at Julia's like half the time anyway, so
You had a place and a half.
yeah, or I come home really late, or
Right.
yeah,
Or you're here at one night a week at least. You're
yeah.
spending your nights with me.
Occasionally crash a friend's place if I don't feel like going home.
Yeah. I'm a homebody. I'm here every night. I like my home. I like my bed.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know. I guess I kind of wing it a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
I definitely have friends who will text me like in the middle of the night, and if I happen to be awake, which I sometimes am, I'll just like go out, and PJ doesn't see me at all for like 2 days, 3 days.
I've got a more regular schedule too, because I work the 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas some days you work the morning, some days you work.
I work random days.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, I get my schedule about 2 weeks ahead of time, but it'll just randomly change.
Yeah, that's actually a something that I think that's really hard is like not really knowing ahead of time when you're going to work.
Yeah, it's tough to plan things. Like I mean, what I can do is request off. As long as I do it like 3-4 weeks in advance, they'll just give me the time off.
Right.
As long as they can get someone to work the shifts, which is always.
Whereas they don't need anyone. If I don't come in, it's not like they need someone to cover my shift.
Yeah.
I just make the work up when I come back.
It's not as time sensitive.
No. And we do have sort of swings. We have larger, we get more work some times of the year than others, and we do hire on more people, and we do occasionally bring on temps and stuff like that to handle the rushes. But, our rushes are like weeks long rushes, not hours long or minutes long. Even though we recorded very recently, we did get a couple of more patrons in the meantime. So I figured I'd read out their names.
Oh, yeah. Is that 3 in the last 2 days? Am I looking at that right?
Last 4 days this month.
Nice.
So patrons are at the Tamerlane level, Karen Linbow.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. We got an Ashaman of Travis Baker, the Ashaman Matt Newcomb, a soldier Luke Morgan, and a soldier Louis Lavelle.
Thanks, all of you. We always appreciate that. And like we say every week, it makes the podcast worth doing. Keeps us going.
Right.
Just reminds us that we have a fairly large audience that really gives a shit. It's totally awesome.
I think they give a shit.
At least gives enough shits to send us money.
Yeah.
Even if it's $1 or $2, it not just makes our day, but it does buy us equipment. And man, if this continues, this could actually, how should I say, changes our budgets.
Yeah.
We can invest more time in the podcast, the more money we're making off of it, because we're, like we always say, 2 pretty regular working Joes.
Again, I'm going to have to stop and shout out to John Horrell.
Was it Hornell?
It's not an N. Damn it.
Horrell.
Sorry, John.
Horrell.
Yeah.
Is that right?
If I mention names are hard, I want to make sure I'm getting this right, because I think I said Hornell in the last episode, which was
Insufficient data.
John Horrill?
Yeah, helping us out with editing, which is really appreciated.
And hopefully editing out all the really terrible mistakes I just made. Because I wouldn't want John to hear that. That would be embarrassing. Wait a minute. No, he's really taken on a huge amount of work and freed up a large amount of my time, at least. And that's allowed us to do things like meet on Saturday rather than me spending all Saturday editing.
Yeah.
And actually we're able to get a little bit ahead and record a little bit extra, and giving us a chance. Well, hopefully once your computer gets back up and running, we're going to do those bonus episodes.
Yeah, should be, maybe Thursday. It depends on how many chapter episodes we have in the bank.
We're running out of chapters in Eye of the World.
Yeah, true. I don't think we're going to take any kind of significant break between Eye of the World and The Great Hunt.
No, I don't think so either.
People have asked us, like, are you going to take a break between books? And I mean, if we do, it'll be like a week.
Yeah. And maybe I might even want to do a summary episode. Like, let's talk about Eye of the World as a whole, something like that.
Oh, yeah. Someone threw that out there a while back. One of our patrons on Discord suggested that we do a summary episode. I like that idea.
Yeah, me too. Maybe hit some of the high points, some of the tricky things, and some of the realizations that we've had that we think we could, maybe try and sum them up in one podcast.
Yeah, we can just kind of go back through and reflect.
Yeah. And just, I want to reflect a little bit on the crazy 6 months we've had.
Yeah. It's crazy that it's only been that long. This feels so routine already, but it really has. Has it even been 6 months?
No. I think at that point it might be.
In a couple more weeks?
Yeah. Because we've gotten...
So what do we have, like 3 more chapters in it? We're doing 49. We're sitting down to do 49 right now. I think 53 is the last chapter. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have 3 chapters left.
So we've got 2 more weeks after this week of recording, and then we'll be done.
Yeah, of EOTW.
Yep. Then you can you can beat up another book.
Oh, I realized that the pages that fell out of this one, because I'm probably mentioned this during recording before, but I have broken the binding and like the cover's destroyed. I've been using the same copy of Eye of the World to read out of and do quotes, and like all my readings and stuff, I'm literally holding a paperback, and like the last 15 pages fell out of the back of the book or something. I just realized it's just the glossary.
Oh, okay.
It's not even the glossary. It's like part of the next book, the prologue of...
Is it Prologue of the Great Hunt in there?
Yeah.
So it's after the glossary.
The man who called himself Bors, at least in this place,
Yep.
sneered at the low murmuring that rolled... Yeah.
Spores. How does Bors die? Pop quiz.
Oh, jeez. Can I prepare?
No.
I don't remember.
Do you remember who Bors is?
Nope. Is it one of the White Cloaks?
It's one of the White Cloaks.
Yeah, I can't remember. I want to say Neal.
No.
Who is it?
He's
one of the major White Cloak characters.
I think he's the questioner.
Oh.
Jacob Carden. And he ends up failing the Forsaken. And Millie Skane is given permission to kill him, and she drowns him with a barrel of wine. They open his mouth up, strap him to a table, put the funnel down his mouth, and pour until he drowns.
Wheel of Time is a dark series.
It's pretty dark. And she does it right next to, another dark friend that she's threatening, and she lets him go.
You're like, this is what happens when you fail.
Yeah, basically. So Bors is eventually killed as a lesson to another dark friend.
Nice.
Yeah.
Or not nice.
Yeah. And that isn't not only not in this chapter, but not even in this book.
Does that happen in the Great Hunt, or is it even after that? I think it might be after that.
Oh, it's long after. It's in Ebu Dar when they're
Okay.
searching for the Bowl of the Winds.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. You know, he's given sort of those 2 conflicting orders from Pedro Nile and the Myrddraal. One to keep Rand alive and one to kill him.
Oh, yeah.
And he fails to kill him, so the Myrddraal kill all his family one by one until there's none left.
That's right. I remember that.
And then once...
Like for every month that Rand stays alive or something like that, a member of your family will die.
Yep. And I think he's even given a chance to maybe redeem himself or something and fails again. And at that point, he gets drowned by the barrel of ale. By Millie Skane, who we've already met.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the pretty lady in the dress.
Total badass.
Mm-hmm. And she actually, that scene where Matt sees her in the circle at the horse race.
Uh-huh.
And follows her home. That's the scene right after that is when she drowns Jacob Carden.
Nodding.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a tangent.
Green Giant.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?